Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating, incredibly high-stakes snapshot of the world on one very specific day, May 2nd, 2026. Our goal here is to untangle 15 major global events that completely dominated the news cycle. And honestly, what's truly mind-blowing is how we can trace almost all of them back to a massive ripple effect originating from just a single geopolitical epicenter. It's like a giant puzzle, and it's a total masterclass in how deeply interconnected our modern world truly is. As you'll see, one domino falling can literally shake the entire board. Okay, let's dive right into this. To really understand how these ripples flow, we're going to break our journey down into 5 key areas: the US-Iran epicenter, the global energy shockwave, economic and corporate fallout, shifting borders and alliances, and finally, we'll look at the human cost. Section 1. The US-Iran epicenter. Now, we absolutely have to start here because this is the primary catalyst driving all of the global tension we're going to talk about today. We're looking at a rapidly escalating standoff, a really complex military deadlock between the United States and Iran. And it's essentially defined by 2 drastically contrasting realities right now. On the diplomatic side, Tehran has floated a 14-point peace proposal, which is currently under review by President Trump. But on the ground, well, the situation is incredibly volatile. The president has expressed some deep skepticism about this proposal, explicitly warning that U.S. military strikes could resume, and quoting him directly here, if they misbehave. So it's a delicate diplomatic tightrope, balanced right on the edge of renewed conflict. And the whole world is watching to see what happens next. And you know, the reality playing out on the water is just as tense. The U.S. Navy isn't just sitting on standby out there. They're actively enforcing a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, which is absolutely crucial for global trade. President Trump characterized this blockade as a necessary measure, but he notably used the phrase, like pirates, to describe the kinds of tactics required to actually enforce it. I mean, that single quote perfectly hits the nail on the head. It illustrates the severe, unconventional, and just incredibly tense reality of locking down one of the world's most vital economic choke points. Moving on to Section 2, the global energy shockwave. So the crucial point here is that when you have a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, the global ripples are immediate and they are massive. This conflict is fundamentally fracturing historical alliances that have stood for decades. Case in point, the United Arab Emirates has officially departed from OPEC. No way around it, this is monumental. It ends decades of absolute solidarity with Saudi Arabia and signals a fundamental realignment of alliances all across the Gulf. Meanwhile, as the U.S. tries to tighten the economic squeeze, China has flat-out rejected new U.S. sanctions targeting its oil refineries that are still trading with Iran. The global energy map is literally being redrawn before our eyes. And of course, when the global energy map fractures, it immediately hits us right in the wallet. Energy costs are soaring worldwide. To put that into perspective, U.S. gas prices have spiked dramatically, hitting as high as $8 a gallon in parts of California. This isn't just abstract diplomacy happening in closed rooms. This is an immediate, daily shock to the lives and budgets of millions of people. Which brings us to Section 3, economic and corporate fallout. Adding to all this economic complexity, we're seeing major protective trade maneuvers happening at the exact same time. Get a load of this. President Trump just announced a brand new 25% tariff on all cars and trucks imported from the European Union. Scheduled to take effect next week, it's a massive shift in transatlantic trade policy. And it's happening right alongside the energy crisis, which just further shakes up and complicates the entire global supply chain. And these compounding shocks, they have very real-world consequences for legacy corporations. Just look at Spirit Airlines. For 30 years, they operated successfully. They were a totally known entity in budget travel. But in recent months, under severe compounding economic strain, they failed to secure a federal bailout. And today, they are shutting down operations entirely. It's a stark, real-time reminder of how rapidly layered economic shockwaves can completely topple a massive company. All right, Section 4, shifting borders and alliances. And this brilliantly illustrates how, beyond the economy, secondary diplomatic ripples are causing military postures to shift rapidly everywhere you look. In Germany, the U.S. is pulling 5,000 troops over Iran-related diplomatic spats. Down in the Middle East, a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has broken, leaving 7 tragically killed by recent airstrikes. Over in Eastern Europe, Ukraine is actively monitoring fresh Russian strikes and military activity near Belarus. Meanwhile, in Asia, Vietnam and Japan are holding a summit for security and energy cooperation. The entire globe is actively reacting. We are seeing a truly fascinating contrast in how nations are responding to this era of global instability.
On one hand, traditional Western ties are fracturing, like the US pulling those troops from Germany over diplomatic disagreements. But on the other hand, we are seeing incredibly proactive alliance building over in Asia. Japan's Prime Minister, Sanae Takaishi, just delivered a major foreign policy speech in Hanoi, pushing a free and open Indo-Pacific strategy by securing deeper energy and security ties with Vietnam. So as old alliances show intense strain, new partnerships are being aggressively forged to try and secure some regional stability.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the human cost.
You know, it's incredibly easy to get lost in the macro-level data, the tariffs, the barrels of oil, the troop movements. But we can never forget that high-level geopolitical ripples ultimately crash down on millions of individual lives. In South Sudan, UN experts are warning that a famine is projected to reach catastrophic levels without immediate international intervention. In Iran, the situation for dissidents remains deeply concerning. Nobel Peace Prize winner Narges Mohammadi has been hospitalized after her health deteriorated significantly while in prison. And over in Myanmar, former state councilor Aung San Suu Kyi has been moved from prison to house arrest under a holiday amnesty program. These are the very real, very severe humanitarian crises happening right now, quietly in the background of all these world trade disputes. Connecting back to the instability we saw earlier in the Middle East, there's a really sobering UN report released just ahead of World Press Freedom Day. It highlights Lebanon as the deadliest country for media workers this year. When we talk about fragile ceasefires breaking and airstrikes occurring, this is the tragic reality on the ground. Journalists are literally risking and losing their lives simply trying to report the truth of these compounding conflicts to the rest of us.
So what does this all mean? Well, we've seen how a single deadlock in the Middle East ripples out to disrupt OPEC, spike gas pumps in California to $8, shift transatlantic trade, move thousands of troops out of Germany, and tragically impact human life across the entire globe. The absolutely crucial question we have to ask ourselves now is, how long can our global alliances hold under these compounding pressures? It's something we really need to think about as we navigate this incredibly interconnected and undeniably fragile world. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the ripples around you.